Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your first talk of the day and the first break of the day too. To continue, we will have the very well-known Charles now working at Handrails, who will talk about MDM and broad collaboration, sort of. I think it's a bit surprise. So we will see what Charles have in mind for us today. And after that, we will have Maria Semykoz, who will talk about a connected topic, actually, the coordination needed between human resources and IT in the purpose of managing mass-scale change. So for now, let's start with Charles. Charles, thanks for being here with us today. And please, you are ready to go now. So
yeah, thank you so much. So I will fire up my presentation. So today, I'd like to just kind of take a look at where we are right now and build into kind of that MDM and broad collaboration. So the bull will come, and this is kind of as I've transitioned into more of a financial venture capital role, looking at kind of more of a broad sweep of things. So the bear is coming, but who knows for how long. So the market's going to be down for a while and it'll come back up. So some things are going to return to normal in the end of the stay-at-home kind of era, but other things are going to kind of just change forever. And I would posit that that's always been the cycle with innovation. An innovation comes in a downturn typically, especially world-changing innovations. And really a little on the history of computing, and this is a focus of mine. My next book is on this, or one of the two that I'm working on. So the Great Depression, it really sucked. It lasted a decade, but in that decade, we got telex, we got digital relays, which was kind of the initial implementation of Boolean logic that was used on computers like the Z1 and Z2. We got Hewlett-Packard, we got the Atnasoft Berry computer, the first real computer in the United States. And World War II really kind of pushed us into building the first of the behemoth mainframes, Colossus, the Harvard Mark I, the Manhattan Project, which used ENIAC. Grace Hopper came out of that, working on the Harvard Mark I, and the MEMX. So the bull that followed, this huge market, the greatest generation, Project Whirlwind gave us interactive computing in that era. The ENIAC became EDVAC and eventually led to the modern Unisys. We got the modem, we got core memory, we got IBM pivoting into electronics. For the Brits out there, we got the Manchester Mark I. And really the 1950s led to this rise of computing. Suddenly people were getting paychecks or their check, and it was punched and banks could process it, things like that. And then we got another recession, the 1960-1961 recession. And here we saw high unemployment leading to inflation. And we got this concept that, hey, let's use computers to kind of manage that capacity. And from there, we got the first of the more mass producing consumer or company focused computers, the ERA 1101, we got time sharing, IBM started mass producing, and we got the first of games, which is super important, Space War. And then we got another recession, of course, because they always come. And so the 1970s recession was 1973 to 1976. And this is where, during this era, is where the personal computing kind of revolution came. Xerox gave us the Alto. We got places like Community Memory teaching tons of kids in San Francisco how to use computers. We got the Altair. Microsoft, which spelled their name funny back then, gave us the first BASIC for the Altair. We got the MOZ 6502 chip, which would end up being used for a lot of early computers. And we got the first big operating system, CP/M. And then, of course, Intel starts shipping chips, and the Z80, the Zylogs, started shipping. And the research and development in that era kind of led to the Apple II, Atari, Commodore, the Trash 80. We ended up with all of these computers that were now starting to seep into people's homes. And then the 1980s recession comes. And this was kind of an overreaction to the 1979 energy crisis, but out of it, we got IBM seeing this personal computing revolution. We got the Mac, we got the GUI, we got portable computers for the first time. Microsoft introduces Word. So again, we see a recession, and in that recession, we see incredible innovation. And some of this is from people who are not working, like all those crazy hippies in San Francisco in the 70s who gave us personal computing. So then we get to the dot-com bubble. And here, the bubble burst in 2000, but Netscape IPO in 95 created the first real internet millionaires. And it got to the point where AOL Time Warner merged in 2000, ending one of the biggest conglomerates of all time. And in this era, we saw the market fall over 75% for a lot of things. And here's a key focus that I've had recently is that the dot-com bubble, it made millionaires, like the Netscape millionaires. But that bear market created this cycle of innovation and these business concepts that a lot of the people who introduced them couldn't capitalize on. And the survivors were some of the biggest known names that we have in business or even in our homes today, like Netflix, Google, Amazon, Salesforce, and even some smaller ones like the Warcraft that we love so much, MySpace, which led to companies like Facebook, iRobot, which is leading to robotics introducing themselves in a lot of aspects of our lives. And during that time, there were also other companies that made it or merged. Apple introduced their retail stores. If you can imagine going to investors and saying, we're going to open a chain of retail stores in the middle of a recession. If you can imagine introducing multimedia as it is today, by adding iTunes and iPods and things like that. We also got the Xbox, the Trio, which started that kind of handheld revolution. And I can say personally, we started a company in Y2K or in 2000, and we were able to grow that to dozens and eventually over 50 people. So the 2004 Google IPO was probably the end of that downturn. And then comes the Great Recession. And here we get Angry Birds, and really more than Angry Birds, we get the whole concept of kind of a microtransaction-based economy, different business models to make money. We got the iPad and the rise of tablet computing, Creative Cloud and the cloud economy in general. And we get social networking actually moving into the political sphere like the Arab Springs on Twitter. And then brings us to today, we get the Corona recession. And this is going to be 2020 to who knows when. And we kind of have this option. We can binge Netflix, or this is a new era for innovation. And if you can imagine, I know dozens of software developers, programmers who are sitting at home without a lot to do right now because either they were laid off or there's just not a lot of business coming in. And here we see a lot of opportunity, and the opportunity areas, or I guess in the VC world, the investment theses that I see here, artificial intelligence for all the things. At this point, we can write a small Lambda function, upload it, and all of a sudden we're processing massive quantities of data using pre-existing frameworks. I see a double down on collaboration, and this session was MDM and collaboration, but I pivoted a little bit, as I'm apt to do sometimes. And in here, we just see new micro-focused, maybe even industry-specific collaboration tools coming out all the time. And I really took a step back as I started looking at some of these companies, and I said, or have the windows closed for that stuff? Like, the lack of innovation that I see out of some really big companies is staggering. But at the same time, those tools are often bundled. And we see Slack becoming dominant. We see Zoom having had an amazing and yet sometimes rough year, but also becoming a dominant force. And then in MDM, we see that becoming ubiquitous in management. And this is across platforms, but I would say more poignant in Apple. So we see Apple removing programmatic options for management. We see instant API level access. We see kind of the end of VPNs and terrestrial servers. We see ubiquity, or almost all cloud management. And all of this simplified management requires much less training. And all of a sudden, those scripting and software development skills we've taken years to learn aren't really necessary for that, but it opens up a whole new potential career path for us. I also see, and this might be because of some of the projects that I'm working on specifically, kind of a new focus on what people want. And I would say Emily was the first person to really turn me on to this, but I've seen a huge growth in things like user experience and just a focus on building stuff that people like. And of course, it's securely. One of the issues that we're seeing is with all of this rapid innovation, some of these things just aren't as secure as we'd like. So who's probably going to do well? You know, there's a bunch of crappy types of businesses, no offense to anyone, on the rise. But then there's also a lot of businesses that kind of bring us good karma. And these are the ones that I'd love to see a focus on. Things like virtual conferences. So I haven't seen any llamas today, but Zoom llama services, I think, are a great innovation and should continue. And I think one of the things here is, in these smaller markets, you can still make lots of money. And so one of the things that I see as necessary, as all of us are out there looking to kind of future-proof our IT and bring in new things, is kind of a bespoke everything. We are Slack for something, some vertical industry or horizontal that is underserved. And so that's hopefully an uplifting look at what we're going through from a lens of the history of what we've gone through and how innovation kind of helps bring us out of it. And that's it. Back to you, Jon.
Thanks a lot, Charles. Thanks a lot. That was inspiring indeed. I will try to share my screen. So next to share now will be Maria Semykoz, with from Gallup company, and gonna talk with us about coordinating human resources and IT team during deployment of mass scale change, basically. Maria, thanks a lot for being with us today, and stage it for you.
Perfect, thank you. 1 second, I will just get my screen to share. 1 second. All right. So thank you so much for joining this session. So a little bit about myself. So my name is Maria. I work for Gallup. I'm joining you today from London. So big hi from over the pond. At Gallup, I work as a subject matter expert on culture change, innovation culture, and employee engagement. I've been working in the area for about 7 years now, so hopefully I can share some of the insights I've gathered over this time. And just a little bit of a background here. I typically work or advise quite large multinational companies, so some of the issues might be different for them compared to the kind of the typical size of maybe smaller or smaller size companies, but could give you still an idea. Probably many of you saw that this meme already. So who led the digital transformation of your company? And the very typical corporate answer is COVID-19, right? So that suddenly companies found themselves in the situation where many of them were not prepared to even administer the basic work from home policy or make it possible. So there was definitely among our clients, we saw quite a bit of a panic on the IT side of things. So do all our white collar workers have, the necessary basically VPN access and all of those basic things. So, but as a few weeks progressed, we've noticed that the concern shifted from panic about our IT systems ready to our people ready, or does it? So basically, the concern really shifted from IT to the people, and that very much confirms what we found anyway before the pandemic. Even is that the success of kind of any IT projects very much depends on people. And if I can be more specific about that, the success of IT projects very much, especially large IT transformations, depend on the quality of people management in an organization. Because the quality of management is the major source of positive engagement of teams and employees, and it is also the major source of frustration. And I'm sure you know that sometimes frustrated people are kind of the worst partners in a challenging IT transformation project. So basically you're kind of, if you are in the IT supply side of things, you have to deal with the consequences of potentially bad people management in your organization. And so that's maybe just one piece of advice from my experience is alert. If you're working with companies supporting their transformation, alert them to the fact that this link between the success of the IT project is linked to the success, to the quality of people management. Ask them, do they have a plan for how to manage a people side of things, people side of the change? Because if they don't, chances are you might need to deal with consequences. So definitely their CTO would face some challenges on that. And just to give you an example of what we are right now seeing with clients of ours who are dealing with the especially remote, basically large-scale remote work right now, companies who were not accustomed to that to large degree before. So, oops, I'm sorry. Okay, so the good news is that even though we see an unprecedented rise in the amount of people working remotely, we already have the data to understand how does work from home feels and is for companies. So we have data to answer the question, how does it impact productivity? Before the pandemic, over 40% of US workers worked from home sometimes. So the pandemic is just accelerating it. So we are working in the known realm, and that's great. What we also know from specifically from even Gallup research is that working from home on average does not impact productivity. So there is absolutely no question that work from home can maintain the same productivity level, and it even has a potential to increase productivity, even though it's not a miracle, like miracle kind of pill as sometimes is shown now in media. So it has basically two sides to it, and I will tell you a little bit about it in a second. One interesting research finding is there is a best kind of golden ratio for on-site and off-site work for people. So basically the percentage of time people spend working from home compared to how much time they spend working in the office together with their colleagues. And in 2016, that ratio was 60 to 80% working, sorry, actually, apologies for the slide. It should, off-site should be on first. So it's 60 to 80% working from home to 40 to 20% from working in the office. So the majority of time could be spent from home, and it's great, but still people need to have that time to connect face-to-face with their colleagues and with their manager. The interesting thing that ratio is not stable. So we've seen an evolution of it from 2012 to 2016. The reason I'm quoting 16 is the last piece of data I have on it. In 2012, its ratio was lower. So it was almost like 50-50 split in terms of from home and off-site. And the hypothesis is that it's connected to the development of technology. So we are now having much better technology to enable meaningful work and collaboration remotely than we used to have in 2012. So it also means that potentially with the explosion of all the great tools we have right now, that ratio can also go up. So potentially maybe even 90% to 95%, who knows, of time spent at home might be fine and might work perfect. But I think the key message here is that before, when we talk about working from home, we always had a combination in mind. So there was always a way to have that face-to-face time. And obviously during the pandemic, for many companies, that's not the case, or at least it cannot be the case for a few weeks or months. Studies show that employees who work 100% remotely are slightly less engaged. So that's just basically a combination. So you really need to have both modes for that to work well. So why is the combination key? So why do we need this ratio? Why doesn't 100% of remote work really work? There are two main reasons, two main issues in remote working. So first is that humans will learn from context, and this contextual learning is something that is implicit. So it's something that we don't even know we are picking up the cues, and it is something that is very hard to introduce in an intentional way, precisely because this learning happens unintentionally. So, and the learning can be in a more traditional sense of learning. So we are seeing how our more experienced colleague is doing something, and we're picking up that skill from them. But it can also be the clarification of expectations, of priorities. We are reading facial cues on what's important, what's not. All of those like small information cues that we're getting in the face-to-face context. The question, I think in terms of technology potential for that, I would, to be honest, right now, I do not see how that could be substituted. So I think this time spent together in the intense kind of quality time work will still have to happen in meetings, face-to-face, in the collaboration sessions. The other deficit in remote work is around social needs. And this is quite obvious, but I think sometimes we underappreciate how important the social needs are. So we are social human beings, and we have some other piece of research that shows that to be happy, to feel the overall well-being, we need to spend about 6 hours per day socializing with people we like. And if you think about it, that's a huge number, because in a normal kind of work situation, it means that big chunk of that positive socializing time is coming from work. So right now, the people who are deprived of that might have suddenly deprived of that might feel that void of that meaningful social interaction. The other thing is, beyond just personal well-being, this social glue is absolutely very, very important for productivity. If you think about all-nighters, or this kind of pizza evenings where you are just ordering pizza into the office and you're staying all night to get something done, oftentimes these things happen in teams that have that very strong social glue. So oftentimes we're staying late to get something done, sacrificing some of the family time because we are working on something together with someone we care about, be it our colleague, be it our manager. We are basically, we are able to achieve way more if we are doing it for someone who we care about. So having that, even like a best friend at work or friendships at work, that's absolutely important. So 100% remote work often does not facilitate it, and it's a challenge. So in terms of how we measure this, the kind of the deficit of social needs, sometimes we ask questions like, I have a best friend at work, and see the agreement on the scale for that item, or someone at work encourages my development. So this is more of a there is someone at work who cares for me, who helps me to develop and grow. So that these aspects tend to dip if a person works 100% remote. And so now maybe just to sum up in terms of so what, and then I will be happy to have a conversation or to answer any questions you guys might have. So what so what can you do if you are managing a team that transitioned to be abruptly remote, or if you are advising clients who are going through that transition as well? First one, there is no question, do a face-to-face retreat as soon as you can. You need to restore that social glue. You need that quality time. So 100% remote is not a good idea. Second, be intentional about being social. And I think there is a lot of material around that in the media. So I'm sure you can find good resources for that. But basically you are lacking water cooler conversations right now. You cannot just pop into someone's office or someone's desk and say, hey, get a minute, or let's go for lunch, let's socialize. The challenge with remote socializing is that it's always very intentional. So you have to call someone, you have to pin someone, and we feel there is always a reason. There should be a rational reason why we are talking to someone, why we are taking away from their productivity time. And the barrier to do that is less if you are face-to-face. But this thing is that we do need that no reason connection. Otherwise people feel lonely, you're losing that social glue. So one advice to be intentional about being social is to allow more time for chit chat in the beginning of meetings, asking those questions, how everyone is doing, in a more kind of expecting a meaningful response rather than just being polite. And the other clue is, if you're managing a team, is once you thought about someone, just like, I haven't talked to X for a while, I wonder how X is doing, or I wonder how they're feeling today. The good way is to do it, or to ask the question the moment you're thinking about it. Because if you would be next to the person, you probably would have done it, and it wouldn't feel weird or random. Even when we are kind of at our, looking at Slack, if you think like you want to ping someone, just do it, even if you don't have a reason. And the last piece of very practical advice is that there is an interesting piece of research actually coming from like ages even in terms of social isolation when we work from kind of not with our colleagues, is that the feeling of social isolation and loneliness peaks at around late afternoon. So it's 3-4 p.m. in the day. And if you think about it, that's pretty, you might understand where it's coming from. So basically that's when your biggest boost of energy that comes in the morning is gone. And you already see how maybe some of your colleagues are dropping off Slack or whatever messenger you're using, and you're feeling that kind of the day is almost over, and in the office you probably would have started another task and put in like 3 additional hours of focused, engaged work. Because your energy levels are depleted and you are alone, there is no one to motivate you, you might feel not like picking up that additional task and not basically and putting a few hours less, or you might just feel more sad, depleted, isolated. So for some teams, what works is introducing the team catch-ups later in the afternoon when they have to be remote 100% of the time. So that can really, basically it's like your afternoon coffee for team spirit. But I think that advice is not universal, so it has to fit for the team, because obviously right now people have different obligations with their families and things, so that has to work. But it's just a good idea, especially if you're thinking about someone in the afternoon. That's a great time, especially a great time to talk to them, to check how they're doing, and maybe say a few genuine kind words about their performance and giving them some recognition. That's all I had prepared to share with you today, and I'm very happy to pick up the discussion.
Thanks a lot, Maria. That was really interesting to follow, especially since I run my own company as fully remote for more than 12 years. So I can relate for a lot of things you just share about. We have some questions from the attendees. So someone is asking basically, I understand there is no 100% substitute to face-to-face interaction, but this may last a while. Are there things we can do that are helpful to keep our team supported emotionally?
Yeah, so I think what maybe we can learn from that group of golden ratio employees, so employees who used to have that 60 to 80% ratio of working from home in the past. So when we look at something we call engagement profile of these people, so aspects of their basic needs at work that are fulfilled, we notice an interesting thing. So they are actually stronger on the social aspects than some of the employees who are based fully in the office. And the hypothesis we have, so what's working there, is that face-to-face time gives you, kind of breaks the ice. It creates that social warmness. And then once you transition to home, being based remotely allows you more meaningful one-to-one conversations. Because if you have that connection and you're basically, you know that if someone is calling you and asking genuinely how you're doing, are you set up for the remote work, how's your family doing, how you're managing your kids, and if you hear these questions and you know that the person is genuinely interested in your response, that is just gold, because that is something that is hard to actually get in a typical face-to-face like day, because some other people around, you don't know if the person is asking because they're interested, or maybe they're just being nice and socially kind of it's a social convention. So I think there are definitely advantages to be found there. So I think the very first advice would be have those meaningful one-to-one conversations, and you can call them whatever you want. You can call them catch up, or they can also be just informal, maybe at the start of a meeting you have for like a very specific work issue, but just ask open questions and really be curious to learn about, to hear what the other person has to say. And I think it goes both ways. So you can do it as a manager, but you can also do it as a colleague. It's definitely helpful.
Awesome.
Maybe other bit I think is quite interesting is so it connects to this learning to the fact that we learn from context is that setting expectations can be harder in remote because the person is deprived of clues you give or cues that you give them kind of during the day. So it's a good idea. So you can use almost like a formula to making sure that once you are finishing the or rounding up the priorities for a day or for a week or for a month, you make sure that there's 3 components in place. So first is that the task is clear, that the way the person is describing the task or the way you're describing the task basically is the same. Just like it's basically basic comprehension, just to make sure that you are on the same page, you understand the issue in the same way. The part that is often missing is how does the success look like? So that deliberately aligning on, so when this task is completed, how the success would look like, given that feeling, I think that and aligning on it, it's crucial. And then the last bit is just the time frame, basically the deadline or the time frame you agree. And I think what's important in that kind of formula, task, success, and time frame, is that these are the only 3 components that you need there. You don't need the how unless the person asks you for it, especially if you are managing. So you're just aligning on the success, and you let the success fuel the person's talent to achieve that success and to get there. So this is how you can help get the clarity of expectations kind of back into or facilitate it in the remote environment.
Okay, awesome. That's a bit connected, but do you see any kind of parallels with people who are the only person in their profession on a job site? Like, for example, a solo sysadmin who cannot really connect on work things with their coworker, and who is basically gonna find this kind of connection over other connection, like the kind of Slack we have with thousands of sysadmin doing the same job in different company. Do you see any kind of parallels with that in that situation?
I think that's a very interesting question, and the answer is we don't have the data to show what the implications would be. I think when it comes to social well-being, most likely you can find the substitutes, right? So before, if you used to hang out with your work colleagues, and you found hopeful dissatisfaction with doing so, which many people didn't, right? So that it's kind of, we are describing the best case scenario. That was the best case scenario for the people working at the company, but also for the company, because if you have the culture, friendship, trust, support, looking after each other, that has a positive impact on productivity. So it's not that only the colleagues benefited from that social cohesion, just as social beings, but also the company gained from it in terms of productivity. We just perform better when we are performing with and for friends. And the problem is with kind of cross, basically professional kind of communities. I think that they're very helpful, but if that's the only thing the person has, it might take away from their engagement with the company.
Okay.
Not even, maybe let me phrase, not even take it away from the company, but at least you won't see the benefit of it for the productivity of the company. So socially the need will be fulfilled, but it's not the same. We are like, with the team we can take it on.
Nice. Before you were saying like some company have some difficulty with workplace culture. What can we do to help if we encounter this in our own organization or in a company we support as a consultant?
I think the first, it's a bit of a shortcut. I would always start with the quality of people leadership and management. So no matter how we describe a culture, it always starts with basically with a direct boss, or however the person is called, manager, go to their different names. But you cannot have a good culture, or you don't have a chance to experience a good organizational culture if your boss sucks. So and I think that's in some cases organizations might have local issues with people management. So basically that may be a department or country or subdivision, or there could be company-wide issue with what is understood to be kind of a blueprint of management. So I think that's where kind of I would start. So I think it's a good idea to think is about where is the issue? Do we see it across the company, or is it just a particular part of it? And obviously it's easier to solve, it's just a part of it. So it's basically addressing, what are the causes here, how we can change them. It's harder to change if it comes kind of from the top, if kind of bad practice, people leadership is what preached from the very kind of, CEO level. There is no quick and easy solution for the issues, but it definitely helps to work on it. So basically, and I think there maybe a good idea here is to think about it in two ways. So first is, what is the baseline culture? Do we see a problem with the baseline culture? So, for example, many companies who struggle with adopting some of the large organizations we worked with who struggle with adopting digital technologies, more like collaborative tools, we knew from the start they would struggle because there was no culture of trust in the company. So when collaboration doesn't work if you don't trust your partner, and no matter whatever tools you're using, it's not going to stick. There would be an issue there. So the problem was kind of in the culture, in the underlying culture of the company. And there are some other issues where the technology can introduce can challenge the existing culture. For example, sometimes with the CRM systems, what we found, salespeople sometimes feel they don't want to share their secrets, or they feel that someone can come and blame them because all their communications with clients suddenly will be exposed and would be able to be tracked and all of that. So this is something that maybe not was necessarily an issue, but it just uncovers a fear that is very kind of personal, and you would, when you introduce a CRM project, you would need to think about how you address that transparency aspect that wasn't there before.
Okay. Another question from the attendee is, in the current lockdown situation all around the world, company will still have to do onboarding and even more sensitive offboarding of employees. What could be your advice for best practices in a situation where you have to onboard, or even worse, more complicated offboard people when being fully remote?
Yeah. I would say probably the biggest advice here is to be to dedicate time to that, and dedicate personal time. So basically, when it comes to onboarding, you need to make sure that the person gets to interact in a social way with the same people they would have if they would be onboarded in a different situation, right? In a normal situation, and it will take more time. So this one thing is maybe potentially allow that process to take longer, and maybe to be structured in such a way, and also set expectations from all sides that you do need that person to have one-to-one meetings with, and potential team meetings with the number of partners they will be working from. And it's required from their partners, no matter how busy they are, to spend time with that new employee. And it is also required of the new employee to initiate this context, or HR department to facilitate it. Because no matter how busy people are, your, if you can, we do have studies that show that well-structured and intense high-quality onboarding can shorten the kind of this kind of no return phase of a new employee. In the beginning, but the person doesn't know what they're doing. That learning curve. So if you're providing a good onboarding, you can sometimes halve it, so from 6 months to 3 months, and it depends on job, right? It depends on what we're talking about. So by basically every partner of the person giving maybe half an hour to the person, you might be gaining 3 months of productivity. So that's lots of return for that time.
Okay, awesome. I think we are out of questions so far, so and right in time, so that's perfect. Thanks a lot for your participation on this virtual conference. It was really nice to having you here. And if you have nothing else to add, we will move to the next session.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.